15th century London was no longer just an important city. It was one of the largest human concentrations in Europe. Nearly 500,000 people lived crammed into a space designed for far fewer. Narrow streets, wooden buildings, and a river that connected everything. In this video, we'll explore 15th century London, using engravings and digital reconstructions to understand how the city moved, where power was concentrated, and why the Thames was so much more than just a river. Before modern avenues or functional bridges existed, the Thames was London's true infrastructure. Food, coal, timber, fabrics, and imported goods flowed on its waters, but so did people. Boatmen, merchants, messengers, judges, clergymen, and politicians travelled by river because it was faster and more reliable than the congested streets. The Thames connected London to the English interior, to Europe, and to the wider Atlantic world. And at the point where all that movement narrowed, one of the city's most extraordinary structures rose. By the 10th century, the old London Bridge was not just a crossing. It was an entire street suspended over the water. Houses, shops, workshops, warehouses, and even chapels occupied the bridge from end to end. From a distance, it didn't look like a bridge at all. It looked like a neighbourhood floating on the river. The bridge rested on narrow stone arches supported by massive piers. These piers violently interrupted the flow of the Thames, creating dangerous currents beneath the arches. Navigating underneath was risky, even for experienced boatmen. Accidents were frequent. Life on the bridge was not easy either. Buildings rose several stories above the roadway. Fire was a constant threat. Congestion inevitable. And yet, entire generations lived and worked there. For centuries, this was the only permanent crossing of the Thames in the heart of London. All north-south traffic had to pass through this point. In some exceptionally harsh winters, the combination of the cold weather and the restrictions of the bridge caused the river to freeze. During these brief periods, the Thames was transformed. People walked on the ice, traded, and celebrated. A normally deadly place became, for a few days, a gathering place. On the western edge of London, far from the congestion of the centre, stood Buckingham House. Long before it became Buckingham Palace, it was a private residence surrounded by open grounds and gardens. Here the city still paused. Beyond, the countryside began. In September 166, London changed forever. A seemingly minor fire spread rapidly through a city built of timbers with narrow streets and tightly packed buildings. The fire raged unchecked for days. Churches, markets, homes, and monuments disappeared in the flames. Even the ancient cathedral of St. Paul was destroyed. From the river London it looked like a continuous wall of fire. When it was all over, much of medieval London had vanished, but the catastrophe also forced the city to rethink its future. While the city burned and was rebuilt, the Tower of London continued to project authority. In the 10th century, it served as a fortress, arsenal, prison, and treasury. Within its walls were kept the crown jewels and prisoners accused of treason, a single building that concentrated the symbol of power and the threat of punishment. Cheapside was one of London's most important streets, a commercial centre but also a ceremonial stage. In 1638, it was the site of Marie de Medici's grand entrance. The pomp, the soldiers, and the crowds masked deep-seated tensions. Foreign influence, Catholicism, and the conflict between the king and Parliament were already unsettling the city. On the banks of the Thames, Westminster concentrated political and spiritual power. The Palace of Westminster housed Parliament at a time when it was beginning to openly challenge the monarch. Westminster Hall was the stage for trials and proclamations that could change the fate of the kingdom, and Westminster Abbey bore the symbolic weight of centuries of royal coronations and funerals. Nearby, Whitehall Palace stretched along the river. It wasn't a single building, but a vast complex where England was governed. Much of it was destroyed by fire at the end of the 10th century. Today, only the banquet house survives. Beyond the city centre, Richmond Palace offered a refuge. Here, monarchs like Elizabeth I found cleaner air and distance from the urban bustle. In time, the palace disappeared. Its walls were dismantled. Its memory was buried beneath the modern city. To explore 10th century London is to understand that cities are not born from a single event.